Hey everyone, Bob here, and welcome back to another video. So, made it in from work today before the sun went down. We still got some sunshine, that's good to go. So I hope to get a little quick video out on the whole keto thing. And I want to do a different type of video where I just kind of ramble a little bit about some of the smaller elements of things that I've been experiencing going through over the ketogenic diet, rather than one larger focus on the thyroid, focus on the science, focus on that. Just a smaller little rambling series of videos that I can do, because there's a lot of little things that don't require a full video themselves. So yeah, we're going to start off with that today, and I'm going to dive into a little bit of hypoglycemia and how my doctors kind of screwed it up, and how I feel bad saying this, I've kind of lost faith in general practitioners, at least in terms of how they go about dieting, they go about weight loss, even the treatment of thyroid. It's not been long enough for me to completely say everything they said was wrong, but the results after a month and 4 days of ketogenic dieting, the results after just 10 days of the iodine, selenium, and the bile salts with my thyroid, everything is just doing so much better. Now, could it be I'm just shocking my body and the body's going to come back? Absolutely. So I'm not ready to throw them under the bus entirely, but man, let's start with like the one that kind of really exemplifies the mistakes that at least my doctor has made. And we'll start with the hypoglycemia on that. There's going to be an entire video that I talk just about hypoglycemia, but the quick short of it is basically your pancreas releases too much insulin to counter sugar. So you eat, we'll just use round numbers. We'll eat, whatever you eat has sugar in it. You end up with 10, we'll say 10 sugar in your blood. Now your blood's always supposed to have a base level of sugar in it. It's kind of your just running metabolic level of sugar in your blood. And if you get below that number, that is when it tells the liver to start converting fat over into ketones in order to use that rather than sugar, right? So we'll say that base number is 3. So you eat, your number is at 10. Your base number that you should never go below is 3 without going over into ketosis. Well, what will happen with hypoglycemic people is the pancreas overreacts. You eat and you have 10 in your blood and it releases way too much insulin. You have a massive insulin spike. And the way chemicals work is you can't just do half of a reaction, right? If every insulin's going to be looking for a cell to bring one sugar in or whatever. So it can't be like just 30% of the insulin just can't flow through your body and not be used. It's just not the way it works. So this insulin spike comes in, and all of a sudden your blood sugar, because there's too much insulin for the amount of sugar you have in your blood, all of a sudden your blood sugar is a 2 or a 1. And for people with hypoglycemia, it causes all kinds of weird things. So first of all, if you don't eat, at least for me, if I didn't eat and I went starting around 10 hours, maybe 12 hours, I would start to get really bad shakes. So my hand would just do this. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating. It was shaking that much if I went long enough without eating. And I'd have these massive cravings is the wrong word, but I don't know of a better word, sugar cravings. And it wasn't like I'm hungry for sugar. It was, I need sugar right now because my body is going nuts. It's losing its absolute mind. So if you didn't eat, that kind of happened. Then you would eat and this insulin would pop and you'd feel real good for about 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And then all of a sudden now your blood sugar is way too low and then you would crash. And it would cause all kinds of other things when it would go on. Real bad sweating is a real common one. If you're someone that is dealing with some weird sugar issues and you sweat more than you really should, for me it would be if I was doing anything beyond basically sitting and driving. After breakfast, so I'll eat breakfast 7:30, 8 o'clock, between 9:30 and 11. If I did anything even slightly above normal exertion, and yes, I'm out of shape, but not this out of shape. Like just I could be literally standing, talking to someone, pointing at things on a whiteboard, and my blood sugar would go all over the place, and I would just start sweating profusely for no reason. It was so annoying. So this is a symptom. You would also get where there's like weird brain fog that would go on, where you just couldn't concentrate. Like you could literally, at least I could literally tell, like I knew my brain wasn't working as well as it should. It was so strange. It was like, I should be smarter than this, but I'm not smart enough right now to know why I should be smarter than this. And it was just awful. And this would go on for about 90 minutes or so, and then I'd come out of it right around 11:30, 12 o'clock. I would start feeling pretty good, like, all right, yeah, and I'm through it. I'm past that. Eat lunch. Now there's sugar in my blood. My insulin spikes again. Boom, 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 and the whole thing would happen again around 1:30, 2 o'clock through 3. It was so bad. So I talked to the doctor about this, as you would. It seems like a pretty serious medical condition, and the doctor's advice had nothing to do with sugar at all. His advice was to eat complex carbohydrates, so pastas and things like that, things that are going to take longer time to digest. So you have the initial sugar rush into your blood system, but then you have more sugar coming into your system over the course of 3 or 4 hours to keep sugar in your blood, and proteins, because the proteins also take a longer time to digest. This was his main recommendation. In fact, one of his recommendations was for breakfast to have like a Greek yogurt with it. And for 2 years, one of my normal breakfasts was a glass of Soylent, the meal replacement drink. We'll get into Soylent in another video, but it would be a glass of Soylent and a Greek yogurt. That was my normal breakfast on most days. If I was really hungry, I might throw some sausage patty in there real quick, some quick microwavable sausage patty, something like that. And on the quote unquote standard low fat, low carb, low fat, low calorie, high carbohydrate diet, it would actually fit right in the macros perfect. It would be something like 360 to 450 calories. The sugars would fit in there and everything, and it would sound really good. Greek yogurt, by all accounts, most people consider it to be a really good, healthy food to eat. Go look at just about any Greek yogurt. They're really good in protein. There's no fat in them. And their sugar ranges, like a vanilla one will be like maybe 12 to 14 grams of, not vanilla, but plain. Plain will be like 12 to 14 grams of sugar. Vanilla will be like 15 to 18. Anything with fruit can be upwards of 30, 35 grams of sugar in one of the little cups of yogurt. It was so much sugar. And yeah, the protein definitely did on the backside. The negative dip wasn't quite as bad, but the peak was so bad in the beginning, it helped the final part of it, if that makes sense. But it also made the initial, like, really bad sweating and all that much worse. So that was directly from the doctor, what they told me. Complex carbs, so pastas and stuff to break down, and proteins, things along those lines. And now I went on the ketogenic diet, and within 4 days, the hypoglycemia was almost completely gone. It's hard to say if it's completely gone because I am overweight, I am out of shape. So there's going to be a certain amount of more exertion, when I'm outside mowing grass or something. I'm dragging 278 pounds with me back and forth as I go back and up and down the lawn. So there's a little bit more exertion than the average person. So more sweating and things like that are to be expected. But the amount is completely different. It's almost completely dropped off. I go to work now and none. Like, I was moving around a 65-pound vacuum pump today, and when I was done it's a hot pump, it's pumping hot oil through it and everything, so the thing's got some temperature. When I was done, some slight beads of sweat around my forehead, but that was it. Whereas a month ago, it would have just been drenching down me. And all of it is because what I've done is, with the ketogenic diet, we've removed most of those insulin spikes. So the pancreas, just because there's less sugar going into the bloodstream, the pancreas is releasing much less insulin, so the sugar levels, the minimum amount of sugar levels are staying in my blood, are staying much, much cleaner. And it was that simple. It was just high fat, low sugar. It was so stupidly simple, but the doctor didn't recognize that? The doctor didn't know that? That's kind of like, it's so easy to watch. I've linked quite a few videos in the description, a lot of my videos, where they go into things about it. There are these chiropractors that talk all kinds of bad shit about doctors, and it's really easy to get into this real negative mentality. And most doctors are trying to do a really good job. They really are. You don't put in the hours of work they do for the years they do, no matter how much money they make. You can't do 30 years of 60, 70, 80-hour weeks if you don't want to do good things, or if you're not trying to help people. At least that's my belief. But man, it's like, now the things that I know, I even look at the low-fat diets. And I go back 4 years ago when I first really started my diet and working out. And if I just known what a ketone was and how to test for it, you, in theory, in theory, if you're someone that must have carbohydrates, you love your breads, you love your fried chicken, things along those lines, you want your breads. In theory, you could actually kind of make it work in, I don't want to call it a ketogenic diet, but you could make it work as a diet that you still lose fat, where if you'd have to set it up so, like, you say your first meal would be 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and at that point you go ahead and you can go kind of nuts with your carbs. You can have your breads and all of that stuff. You're going to get your insulin spike, but that's going to get you through till your dinner or whatever your last meal of the day is going to be. And you do that, say, around 7 o'clock. And in that meal, you would go ahead and eat a whole lot of fat, keep the carbs real low. And what you'll do is you'll be able to enjoy your carbs. At the end of the day, you would load yourself up with fat. Now, you would have a little bit of hunger because your body's never going to become fat adapted. There's a difference between ketosis and fat adapted. We'll go into that right here in a moment. But because you're never going to become fat adapted, you are going to deal with a little bit more hunger. But since you loaded yourself up with fat on your last meal, you should be able to get back around till 2 o'clock the next day. And after about 10 hours or so, the ketosis will kick in. The hunger should go down quite a bit and get around. So in theory, it could work. And you could do that, like a normal diet like that. And as long as you're monitoring your ketones, you're seeing, yes, I am burning fat and everything, you could lose weight. But I went 2.5 years doing this, and I saw 3 different doctors plus a nutritionist in that time period. No, 2 doctors and a nutritionist. The 3rd doctor was before that. All of them, we talked about it and let them know what everything was doing. Not one of them brought it up. Like, it was just they had never talked about it. And I'd heard in passing about a ketogenic diet, but I thought it was more along the lines of paleo. I didn't really understand that it was more based on the actual science of the breakdown of fat. And it boggles my mind how this whole industry that is so focused, like weight loss in America is this big thing. We have a big obesity problem. There's a lot of people throwing a lot of money at it, but there's very little talk about it in the mainstream. Now, the cynical people are going to be like, well, it's because there's no money to be made. There's no money to be made for telling people just don't eat. Just don't eat isn't going to make you a whole lot of money. And maybe that is some of it. I can see why that doesn't end up on the, what's the big one from Oprah, Dr. Oz. Like, I could see why that doesn't end up on there. There's not going to be a whole lot of marketing for that one. But we're in a time period where information is easier to come by than ever before with the internet and everything. Yet, you have to dive pretty deep into the internet before you start getting a lot of these, the videos that I've been linking. Like, my search history had to basically completely change before Google started showing me those videos and saying, oh yeah, because they're very odd. It's just very strange. Now, there was something I wanted to get back to. Oh, fat adapted versus just ketones. And this will be the last part. We'll clean this up. So this is something that is important to memorize or learn if you're considering going down the ketogenic diet. So your body can be running on fat, burning using ketones, and you won't be fat adapted. They're 2 different things. For example, within the first 3 days of me going to the ketogenic diet, I was burning and creating ketones. I could see it in my urine when I'd go to the bathroom. Now, that is different than fat adapted. What fat adapted means is, and this was something I talked about in the very first video, by default, your body wants to burn sugars, carbohydrates, as its baseline metabolic fuel. After somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks of having a low enough number of carbohydrates, your body, the muscle memory of everything, will start to change over to where it no longer even looks to that sugar level. Now, when you do eat something and there's some sugar in it, no matter what, there's going to be some carbohydrates in your vegetables and all that stuff. You're going to eat a little bit. It's still going to consume that, but it's kind of it's almost like nitrous oxide on top of it. So if you have a car, rather than it trying to run entirely on the sugar, it's just going to use that as a little burn real quick, and then it's going to go right back and focus on fat. And that's when you become fat adapted. So you can, in theory, and this goes back to that other diet I was saying before, you can, in theory, if you limit the amount of fat you're bringing in, or I'm sorry, not the number of fat, the number of carbohydrates you're bringing in, you can be in ketosis without being fat adapted. When you become fat adapted, in fact, I just had this yesterday or the day before, where it was like 4 in the afternoon. I was hungry. I went downstairs, and the first thing that I was craving was cheese. It was kind of weird. It wasn't salty potato chips or popcorn. It was cheese. And that's kind of a big sign that you're fat adapted. My body, my metabolism, all that system was saying, we're running a little light on energy here. Give us some fat. And so it wanted some cheese. And that was kind of it. It's a minor distinction. It really is. It's the reason why a lot of bodybuilders can carb load. They can do carb loading. They can do all heavy proteins and still lose weight and still be really skinny. It's because they're in ketosis, because they're using up a huge amount of calories and they're using up all of the sugar energy in their bodies. So they are in ketosis, but their body is not really fat adapted. It still prefers the sugar energy. That's kind of one of the things. Now, that's not all everyone. A lot of your runners, they're going to be fat adapted. They're going to be that, but we're talking, different extremes. And it's different for everyone also. Yeah, I think that's about it. I found myself, I was driving home today, and it was a good 2-hour drive home, and I'm just going through my mind, like, everything that I talked with the doctors about, and how not one of them, even the nutritionist, a designated nutritionist, didn't bring it up at all. It was just, cut calories, don't need any of the bad sugars, none of your candy and stuff, which I've never really, at least not in the last 10 years, I've never been big on candy bars, junk food, things like that, and you'll be fine. Like, how did you not tell me about a ketone? All right, until next time, everyone, thanks for watching.